Autumn in Iowa is brief, and winter arrives early. Caroline Murphy was clearing the breakfast dishes while looking out the kitchen window. The red maple leaves dancing in the wind in the garden stirred an uneasiness in her heart. "Emma, are you ready?" Caroline called gently. "Just a minute, Mom." Her daughter's voice returned from upstairs, as bright as ever. Caroline glanced at the clock and frowned slightly. Today was the day of an important presentation at the pharmaceutical company. As the research team leader, it was the culmination of a new drug development project she had been working on for 5 years. But what occupied her mind more was her anxiety about leaving her 8-year-old daughter Emma with her mother and sister for just one day. Emma came down the stairs. With her little backpack and brown hair tied in 2 ponytails, she looked just like Caroline herself when she was small. The only difference was Emma's bright blue eyes, inherited from her divorced husband, Richard. "Look, Mom. I'm wearing the Christmas present from Dad." Emma proudly showed her wrist. There was the latest smartwatch. "I can video chat with Dad on it." Caroline smiled. "That's lovely. But don't play with it too much at Grandma's house." "I won't," Emma promised, but her eyes sparkled with curiosity. As they got into the car, Caroline sighed deeply inside. It had been 3 years since her divorce from Richard. He was now successful as the head of an overseas branch, but that came at the cost of sacrificing time with Emma. Phone calls and video chats couldn't completely fill the void of a father's presence.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
"Mom, how was your test today?" Emma looked down slightly as she answered. "Well, math was a bit difficult." Caroline gently stroked her daughter's shoulder. Emma struggled with learning, but her creative thinking and kind personality were Caroline's pride. "That's okay. We'll review it together." "How about your drawing?" Emma's face brightened. "The teacher said she wants to put it in the school exhibition." "That's wonderful." Caroline was genuinely delighted. Artistic talent was Emma's strength. The car arrived at Caroline's parents' home. The white-pillared colonial-style house seemed to symbolize her mother Elizabeth's status as a town dignitary. The door opened, and Elizabeth Murphy greeted them with perfectly arranged hair and a pearl necklace. "Caroline, good morning." "Emma, aren't you going to greet your grandmother?" Elizabeth's voice always contained a subtle command. Emma obediently greeted her and went inside. In the living room, Caroline's sister Becky was looking through a magazine while drinking coffee. "Finally here," Becky said, glancing at the clock. "I'm busy today too, you know." Caroline set down Emma's backpack without arguing. "I've packed her study materials. She has some homework, could you help her with it?" "Of course," Elizabeth said, but her eyes appraised Emma critically. "But honestly, Becky's friend Jenny's son is also 8 years old and can already do multiplication, while Emma still struggles with addition." Caroline tried to hide her tense face. "Emma has her own pace, Mom." "Caroline, you've become too soft since becoming a mother," Becky interrupted. "You should be stricter with children. Spoiling her will cause problems later." As they parted, Elizabeth grabbed Caroline's arm. "It's fine, you focus on work. I'll make sure Emma gets the discipline she needs." A meaningful smile played on her lips. As she returned to her car, Caroline felt reluctant to leave. She had left Emma for short periods before, but this was the first time for a whole day. Emma's anxious expression at the doorway pierced her heart. "Mom, you'll come back, right?" Emma's small voice carried on the wind. "Of course, I promise," Caroline answered firmly as she started the car engine. From the conference room window, she could see the gray sky covering the Iowa town. Caroline checked her smartphone and took a deep breath while preparing for her presentation. Her phone vibrated, displaying a message from her mother. "Emma spilled milk at breakfast. Just like a baby. You should discipline her better. Caroline frowned. Accidents happen to everyone. She replied briefly, "Is everything okay? How's Emma?" The reply came quickly. "I made her clean it up properly. I reminded her to wash her hands too. By the way, she brought her math workbook, but she can't even solve simple problems. Becky's acquaintance's child is the same age and has already won a piano competition." Caroline put down her device and felt her heart beating faster. Why did her mother always compare Emma to other children? She was about to reply when the conference room door opened and her boss, Dr. Harrison, entered. "Ready, Caroline? The CEO will be joining us," his voice was encouraging. Caroline smiled. "Yes, I'm fine." But her heart was with Emma at her parents' house. As she opened her presentation materials, vivid memories returned. It was the night of a Christmas party a year ago. Distinguished guests had gathered at Elizabeth's luxurious home. Emma was made to stand before the piano to perform a piece she had practiced. Her fingers trembled with nervousness, and Emma made several mistakes. "I'm sorry. I can't," Emma said in a small voice. Elizabeth, with an elegant smile, told the party guests, "My granddaughter seems to need more practice. Some children have natural talent, but my granddaughter is a bit delayed." That night, Caroline took Emma home early. As she held Emma lying in bed, she whispered, "You are a very special child. No matter what Grandma says." But the incident left a deep wound in Caroline's heart. "Shall we begin?" Dr. Harrison's voice brought Caroline back to reality, and she regained her professional demeanor. She displayed her slides and began fluently explaining the results of 5 years of research. It was about a new treatment for neurodegenerative diseases. While Emma was on her mind, her sense of responsibility suppressed those concerns. During the presentation, her smartphone vibrated again. Caroline tried to ignore it, but notifications continued every few minutes. When she checked during the break, there was a series of messages from her mother. "Emma ate cookies without permission. She really has no discipline. She's not making any progress with her math drills, and her handwriting is messy too. Becky was saying too, maybe you should consider a special education class." The last message sent pain through Caroline's chest. This wasn't just advice. It was an idea her mother and Becky had been trying to impose on her. 3 months ago on a Sunday, Becky had visited her apartment. While Emma was drawing in her room, Becky, holding a coffee cup, said, "Caroline, how long are you going to pretend to be the perfect mother? Put that child in a special class. It's obvious she's not normal." Caroline trembled with anger but kept her voice low so Emma wouldn't hear. "Emma is special. She has her own pace. Her teacher says so too. You always turn a blind eye to reality. Mom says the same thing." Since then, Caroline had minimized her relationship with Becky. Drinking water in the break room, Caroline took a deep breath. She needed to focus on the presentation again. She didn't reply to any of her mother's messages and set her phone to silent mode. The afternoon session went well too. The CEO seemed impressed with her research and made positive comments about the next phase of the project. Normally, Caroline would have been filled with joy, but her heart was still full of concern for Emma. As the final session was about to end, her smartphone flashed with a notification of a video call from Richard. This wasn't their usual time. Caroline left the conference room without hesitation. "Richard? What's wrong?" Richard's face showed clear confusion. "I got a strange notification from Emma." "What's going on? Isn't she in school today?" Caroline's heart raced. "I left her with my mother and Becky today." "What kind of notification did you get?" "I'm not sure of the details. Something was sent from Emma's watch, but I couldn't open it. I was in the middle of work." "I'll check it now," Richard frowned. Is Emma okay? I don't know. Caroline answered honestly. I'll go pick her up right away. She told her boss about the emergency and cut the meeting short. As she got into her car, a voice message from Emma arrived on her smartphone. Caroline cautiously pressed play as she started driving. Mom, Grandma said I have to practice cleaning because I'm too stupid. Emma's voice was trembling. Mom, please come back. Caroline pressed the gas pedal. Her heart was pounding fiercely, anger and fear rushing through her body. She never imagined a message from Emma would cause such anxiety. As she drove along the suburban roads, she asked herself why she had accepted the poison from her mother and sister for so long. Why had she believed they wouldn't do anything to threaten Emma? Parking in front of the family home, Caroline noticed another message from Richard. A video was sent from Emma's watch. Check it immediately. The heavy oak door of the family home felt heavier than usual. As Caroline stepped inside, an unusual silence enveloped her. The polished marble floor, the family portraits on the walls, and the perfectly placed antiques, all evidence of Elizabeth's perfect home, felt cold and intimidating. Hello? She called out. Her voice echoed in the formal living room filled with expensive furniture. Becky was sitting on the sofa. She held a thin wine glass in one hand and a luxury fashion magazine in the other. She looked up and smiled slightly at the corners of her lips. There was something eerie about that smile. Oh, you're back already. Becky looked at the clock. Earlier than planned. Caroline felt her heart beating rapidly. Where's Emma? Emma is learning discipline. Becky's voice sounded light, as if hiding something. You know, Caroline. Children need discipline. You always spoil her too much. What are you talking about? Caroline raised her voice. Where is Emma? At that moment, a faint cry reached her ears. It seemed to be coming from upstairs. She ignored Becky and rushed up the stairs. Her phone vibrated with another message from Richard. I checked the video. Get Emma out of there now. I've already contacted a lawyer. Caroline ran down the hallway. Her heart felt like it would burst from her chest. The crying was coming from the master bathroom. As she approached the door, she heard her mother's voice. Scrub harder, Emma. Look, it's still dirty here. Caroline grabbed the doorknob and flung the door open. The sight that greeted her eyes was more horrifying than any nightmare. On the white tiled floor, kneeling and hunched over scrubbing the toilet, was Emma. An adult-sized apron was wrapped around her small body, with "Maid" written in large letters on the back. Emma's face was wet with tears, and her little hands were red and rough. Elizabeth stood next to Emma wearing an expensive silk blouse. She held yellow rubber gloves in her hand, using them to direct Emma's work. When Elizabeth noticed Caroline, she was surprised for a moment but quickly regained her composure. Caroline, you're back early, her voice had a hint of urgency. I was just teaching Emma the importance of housework. Caroline was speechless. Her entire body trembled, and she felt her vision turning red. But she couldn't explode in front of the child. She took a deep breath to maintain her composure. Becky appeared behind her and said with a giggle, it's punishment for eating cookies without permission. We're teaching her discipline. Looking at Caroline's face, Becky continued more provocatively, besides, this kind of practice is good for her. Right, Mom? Elizabeth nodded with a cold smile. Since she can't study well, being a maid is just right for her future. Emma looked up crying. At that moment, her eyes met Caroline's. In those small eyes were fear, confusion, and a plea for help. Caroline remembered the day 8 years ago when she first held this child in her arms. At that time, she made one vow, to protect this child at any cost. Mom. Emma's voice was hoarse. I'm sorry, just one cookie. Those words shattered Caroline's heart. Without saying a word, she approached Emma and gently lifted her up. Caroline could feel her daughter's body trembling. She noticed the smartwatch on Emma's wrist was glowing. It had been in recording mode all along. "Please, Caroline," Elizabeth suddenly said in a soft voice. "Don't overreact. This is just education. You were raised this way too." Caroline turned around. Her eyes had become cold as ice. "No, Mom. I wasn't raised like this. And I will never let Emma experience this." "Caroline, calm down," Becky said. There was no longer any laughter in her voice. "We were just helping. You spoil Emma too much. Besides, she really is." She continued, choosing her words. "She's not normal." "What do you mean?" Caroline's voice was low and dangerous. "Well, her issues at school, not being able to do math." Becky's words trailed off. Caroline held Emma tighter. As she tried to remove the apron, she found it was tightly tied. The fact that someone here had put this humiliating garment on her daughter made Caroline's blood boil. But she maintained her composure. What she needed now was to take Emma to a safe place. "Mom, my backpack." Emma whispered. "I'll get it now," Caroline answered gently. "It's okay, we're leaving here soon." Still carrying Emma, she ignored the two women and went into the hallway. As they descended the stairs, she could feel Emma's small body gradually releasing its tension. "Caroline!" Elizabeth shouted from the top of the stairs. "Do you know what this means? You're just overreacting. We're family." Caroline didn't stop and headed to the living room. Emma's backpack was placed next to the sofa. She picked it up and headed for the entrance. "You're leaving?" Becky came down the stairs and asked. For the first time, her voice had anxiety mixed in. "It was just a bit of discipline." "You're overreacting." Caroline put her hand on the door, but her mother's voice sounded again. "Caroline and Murphy. Stop right now. You are my daughter, and Emma is my granddaughter. I have rights." At those words, Caroline turned around for the first time. Her face had a mixture of sadness and anger. "Blood ties don't make a family, Mom. Love and respect do." Without saying anything more, she opened the door and went outside with Emma in her arms. The early evening Iowa air enveloped them. The orange-tinted sky seemed to herald a new beginning. Getting into the car, Caroline gently placed Emma in the passenger seat. She was still trembling with fear. Caroline stroked her daughter's hair gently and fastened the seatbelt. "It's okay, Emma. You're safe now." As she started the engine, Emma said in a small voice, "Mom, it's all recorded." She pointed to her smartwatch. "Dad told me to press the record button if anything bad happened." Caroline stared at Emma's small face. There were still traces of tears in those blue eyes, but something strong was shining there. Caroline was choked with emotion at the courage and intelligence residing in this small body. "You are truly a smart child, Emma," she said with a trembling voice. "Dad would be proud of you." As she drove away, Caroline looked in the rearview mirror. Elizabeth and Becky were standing on the porch, watching them leave. Their expressions showed disturbance and confusion. But there was no regret in Caroline's heart. "Where are we going?" Emma asked. "First to a hotel," Caroline answered. "And tomorrow, Dad will come back. We'll make new plans together." Emma nodded silently. Her small hand touched Caroline's arm. That touch conveyed trust and reassurance. As the car progressed along the twilight road, determination solidified in Caroline's heart. Never again would she place her child in a dangerous situation. Even if they were blood relatives, she would protect Emma from people who would harm her. That was her duty as a mother. "Mom," Emma said quietly. Am I really stupid? Caroline felt her heart breaking. She pulled the car over to a safe spot and turned to Emma. Absolutely not, Emma. You are a very special and wonderful child. Everyone learns at different paces and expresses talent in different ways. Your drawings are beautiful, and your heart is kind. Grandma and Auntie don't understand how valuable that is. A small smile returned to Emma's face. From the hotel room window, Caroline gazed at the early morning street. She had barely slept all night. In the adjacent bed, Emma was finally breathing peacefully. Last night, she had spent a long time calming her daughter and had to soothe her after she woke up from nightmares several times. Her smartphone screen lit up, displaying a message from Richard. Landed. We'll be at the hotel in 30 minutes. Caroline took a deep breath. She had already contacted Richard and explained everything last night. He had immediately boarded an international flight to come to them. Mom? Emma's small voice was heard. She sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. Is Dad coming? Yes, very soon. Caroline sat next to her daughter and stroked her soft hair. Are you okay? Emma thought for a moment before nodding. Yes. But I don't want to go to Grandma's house anymore. I will never take you there, Caroline answered firmly. Never again. There was a knock, and Caroline opened the door with a tense expression. Richard Murphy stood there. Despite 36 hours of flight and jet lag, his eyes were sharp, and his expression showed determination. Dad! Emma jumped up and ran to her father. Richard knelt and embraced his daughter tightly. I'm sorry, Emma. I couldn't come right away. He gently took his daughter's arm and looked at the smartwatch. This protected you, didn't it? Emma nodded proudly. I did what you said. Press the record button if anything strange happens. Richard looked at Caroline. His eyes had a mixture of anger and sadness. I spoke with Lawyer Johnson. After checking the video, he said we can take legal action immediately. The three sat at the table and discussed future plans. While Richard had Emma watch television in another room, he turned to Caroline. When I saw that video, I couldn't believe my eyes. His voice was low, filled with suppressed anger. I can't believe your own mother would do something like that. Caroline shrugged. I couldn't believe it either. But looking back, there were signs. The criticism of Emma, the comparisons, that cruelty in the name of discipline. They can't come near her anymore, Richard said firmly. Your and Emma's safety is the priority. Caroline nodded. But as long as we're in this town, they'll find us. Mom has influence and won't give up easily. Richard looked out the window. Actually, I had an offer to transfer to the San Diego branch. I was going to decline, but now I'm reconsidering. California. Caroline's eyes widened in surprise. It might be a good place for a new beginning, Richard smiled gently. For Emma, and for you. Caroline was speechless. The idea of leaving Iowa was sudden, but she also felt a sense of liberation. What about my job? I hear your research is excellent. There are plenty of pharmaceutical companies on the West Coast. And if you want a career change, this might be a good opportunity. 2 days later, they were sitting in the district court. Based on Emma's recorded evidence and Caroline's testimony, the judge immediately issued a temporary restraining order. Elizabeth and Becky did not appear in court, only their representative was present. Ms. Murphy, the elderly female judge said, from the evidence I've seen, this is a clear case of psychological abuse against your child. This matter will also be reported to Child Welfare Services. On the way back, Caroline was holding Emma's small hand tightly. The court experience had been tiring but also had a purifying effect. What happens next? Emma asked. A new adventure begins, Caroline answered brightly. We're going to California. There's a big ocean there, and lots of sunshine. Emma's face lit up. Will Dad live with us too? Caroline and Richard exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed this point in detail yet. For the 3 years since their divorce, they had only been in contact to fulfill their roles as parents. "We are your parents, Emma," Richard said gently. "No matter what form it takes, we'll be there for you." A week later, Caroline had nearly finished packing up her apartment. She kept only the essential necessities, everything else was donated or sold. For a new life, the burden of old belongings wasn't necessary. In the evening, as Emma returned from school, Richard arrived as well. He held 2 airline tickets. "First flight tomorrow morning. Are you ready?" That night, Caroline wrote one last letter. She poured all the emotions she had been carrying into this single sheet of paper. To Mother and Becky. "You were blood relatives, but not true family. Family loves, supports, and accepts. The wounds you gave Emma will remain in her heart. But she is strong and kind. She will overcome. Emma and I are starting a new life. Please don't try to find us again. It would be futile. Goodbye. Caroline." She closed the envelope and placed it on the desk. It would be delivered by the real estate agent the next day. Before dawn, the 3 quietly left the apartment. Emma dragged a small suitcase, looking up at her parents with sleepy eyes. "Ready?" Caroline asked. "Yes," Emma showed her smartwatch. "I brought Dad's present." Richard smiled and stroked his daughter's head. "That will always protect you." The 3 got into the car and drove down the quiet streets before sunrise. As Caroline looked out the window, she noticed a new feeling welling up inside her. It wasn't fear or sadness, but hope. "Mom, what kind of place will our new home be?" Emma asked from the back seat. "I don't know yet," Caroline answered honestly. "But one thing is certain. Wherever we are together. That's what real family is." The car quietly left town and headed for the highway, leaving the past behind and the future ahead. The calendar showed 2029. Elizabeth Murphy's bedroom in her mansion had lost its former splendor. Lying in her sickbed, she stared out at the winter landscape with hollow eyes. 5 years had robbed her body of strength and etched deep wrinkles on her face. "Mom, it's time for your medicine," Becky entered the room. Heavy fatigue colored the area beneath her eyes, and her once sharp attitude had disappeared, replaced by quiet resignation. Elizabeth nodded weakly. Terminal pancreatic cancer was draining her vitality. "Caroline." "Emma." The words were repeated daily. "Not yet," Becky answered softly. "But we're still looking." For 3 years, she had hired a private detective to search for her sister and niece. But Caroline and Emma had vanished without a trace, as if into the fog. "Did bad things," Elizabeth murmured, still facing the window. "Want forgiveness." Becky sighed. As her mother's illness progressed, she herself had begun to reflect on past actions. She understood that on the day they made Emma kneel on the floor, something had broken. It wasn't just family bonds, but something more fundamental: respect for human dignity. On the weekend, Becky visited the local newspaper's editorial office. With hesitation, she handed a piece of paper to the editor. "Could you publish this?" It was a small advertisement. "To Caroline and Emma, I sincerely apologize for the pain we caused you. Elizabeth's time is limited. Please come back." From Becky. A week later, Elizabeth had grown even weaker. The doctor informed them she had only days left. Becky sat by the window, holding her mother's hand, praying for a miracle. But no miracle came. Elizabeth Murphy passed away quietly, without reuniting with her daughter and granddaughter. The funeral was held in a church filled with mourners. It was a clear, cold day. As town dignitaries delivered eulogies one after another, Becky sat alone in the back row, shedding tears. No one knew the truth hidden beneath the perfect appearance. As the mourners headed to the cemetery, a car was parked under an old maple tree behind the church. "Are you sure this is okay?" Emma, now 13, asked her mother. Her hair had grown long, and her features had refined. Caroline nodded quietly. "I came to say a final goodbye." They had just flown in from California. Richard was waiting in the car. Although he and Caroline had not remarried, they had built a new relationship as respectful co-parents. The three watched the funeral procession from a distance. Emma's hand squeezed Caroline's. "Did you want to see Grandma?" Emma asked her mother. Caroline looked at her daughter's matured face. The old wounds had healed, and strength and compassion resided in her eyes. "Why don't you go?" Emma suggested. "She was regretful, wasn't she?" Caroline smiled. "True family is bound by respect and love, not blood. Our family is here." She looked at Emma and Richard. And the three quietly returned to the car and headed to the airport. As Caroline looked back one last time, she felt she had truly become free. She understood that forgiveness is sometimes not something given, but something released for one's own sake. And that was the most valuable gift.